Hi, and welcome to Tactical Theology. Today we are continuing our conversation on worldviews. Today we're going to be talking about the foundations of a worldview, what kind of underlying beliefs form people's worldviews. So just to remind you, the definition of a worldview is the sum of all of our beliefs about reality. Everything we believe about reality forms our worldview. And every belief we have about reality can be put into four categories, which I'm going to list out and kind of explain today. We can use these categories to understand our worldviews, assess others' worldviews, and the four categories you can put into an acronym, right? I put into the acronym TAKE, T-A-K-E, as in this is my take on worldviews. And TAKE stands for theology, anthropology, knowledge, and ethics. So every belief that we hold about reality falls into one of these four categories. Whether you're atheist, whether you're Christian, agnostic, secular humanist, or even if you haven't put any thought into worldviews at all, every belief you have will fall into one of these four categories. Let's just begin with theology. So when I say theology in this instance, I'm not talking about particularly someone's belief in God. When I say theology, I'm talking about ultimate reality. What is someone's understanding of ultimate reality? Now, ultimate reality really means the supreme, final, and fundamental substance in all reality, right? So if you break down all non-essential and non-necessary entities, then you are left with one underlying truth, right? And whatever truth that remains is considered ultimate reality. It's what everything else is based on. So Robert Lawrence Kuhn, or Kuhn, however you say his last name, said it like this: to see ultimate reality is to follow explanations until explanations end. And when explanations end, what remains? Whatever remains after you follow all the explanations until the explanations end, whatever remains is considered ultimate reality, because that's what everything else is based on. It's what explains everything. Whatever explains all reality, all truth, all existence, that is whatever ultimate reality is. You have to go back to when you're a kid and you go to your dad and you say, Dad, where does rain come from? And his response is, I don't know, ask your mother, right? So then you go to your mother and you say, Mom, where does rain come from? And she says, oh, rain comes from the clouds. Well, where do clouds come from? Well, clouds come from, water evaporating from the earth. Okay, well, where does water come from? And you keep asking these questions. And even something as simple as asking, where does rain come from? And you follow those explanations, where, why, what, and you just keep going. Eventually, you're going to get to a point where you ask, where did water come from, right? And whatever the answer to that is ultimate reality. So even something as simple as where does rain come from will lead you to the thing that explains all of existence, all of reality. And ultimate reality is basically the ultimate question. However you answer this question, however you define ultimate reality, is going to shape the rest of your worldview. Every belief that you have about reality will be shaped depending on how you view ultimate reality. And so just a few questions that you can ask either yourself or if you're assessing someone else's worldview to kind of determine how they view ultimate reality. There are a few questions you can ask. One is, do they express belief in the supernatural, right? This could be spirits or consciousness or a god or many gods or a certain type of god or whatever. Or do they believe that there is only the natural, right? Or do they believe in some kind of supernatural? Or do they believe that all you have is material substance? If you go out on the streets and you talk to the random guy in the streets, most of the time they're going to say, well, I don't believe in God, but I believe in a higher power. Okay. Well, if you get that response, then you should ask them, can you explain this higher power to me? Right? What are some of this higher power's characteristics? How does this higher power act? Is this higher power personable? Right? Can they relate to you? Can they communicate with you? How many are there? Is there only one? And then you should ask, how do you know? How do you know that this higher power exists? Is it because you read it in a book? Is it because everybody else believes in some kind of supernatural being? Right? There's got to be some reason why you're telling me you believe that this higher power exists. And the way that they describe this higher power is going to be very revealing about what they really believe about it. Now, something to note here, especially since most of us that are watching this are probably Christians, we need to be thinking about this through a Christian lens. So when someone answers the question of theology or ultimate reality, we need to analyze how these people live, including yourself, right? If you're analyzing your own worldview, how does this person live? What do they do? How do they act? Because someone may profess Christ, someone may say they believe in God, and they may even be a true Christian, but if they don't live like it, then they truly don't have a Christian worldview. And they don't see God as ultimate reality. Because if they do see God as ultimate reality, and they do truly hold to a Christocentric, meaning Christ-centered worldview, then they're going to live in a very different way than someone who doesn't. More on this in the next video, but just for now, know that however someone answers the questions, let me rephrase that. Just because someone answers the questions in a certain way doesn't mean that they necessarily actually hold to that worldview. And that's whether they realize it or not. So that's theology. How about anthropology? Anthropology is basically the study of man. Specifically, when we talk about anthropology in this sense, we're asking the questions of value and purpose and like characteristics of humanity. Now, however one views ultimate reality is going to inform their beliefs about humanity. So, however someone views ultimate reality is going to tell you where your purpose comes from. If you have purpose, if there is a goal in life, should there be a goal in life? And some questions that you can ask to determine someone's anthropology. What is the purpose of your life? Right? Maybe you'll get questions like, well, the purpose of my life is to get money, right? And then you can ask, once you've asked them what your purpose is in life, you can ask them, well, how do you know when you fulfilled your purpose? Or where does this purpose come from, right? What is the purpose of having that purpose, right? You could also ask, does humanity have problems? Such as, do you think that humanity is evil? Do you think there's some kind of form of evil? If so, if you think that humanity has some kind of problem, if humanity is broken in some way, what is the way we can solve these problems? Is it through better politics? Through better economics? Through better mental health? There's got to be some way that we can fix this. Unless, you're a Darwinian and we just have to weed out and evolve past this. We need to evolve to a better moral state. Which that's a video for another time. Let's go to knowledge, K. So we've got theology, which is ultimate reality, anthropology, which is the study of humanity. K is knowledge. So does truth exist? What is truth? Is truth knowable? What does it mean to know something? How can you know something? So there are two philosophical categories. We can't dig too deep into them right now, so I'm just going to give you definitions. Two philosophical categories of knowledge: ontology and epistemology. Ontology is the study of being and reality. So it answers questions like, well, maybe it doesn't answer questions, it asks questions such as, what is real and what does it mean for something to exist, right? What is real? And epistemology is the study of knowledge, right? So how do we know what we know? Or simply, what is real and how do you know it, right? What is real and how do you know it is ontology and epistemology combined. So all worldviews have answers to this, and that, whether they realize it or not. For instance, some may believe that, the supernatural doesn't exist. Well, that's stating a claim about reality. So the supernatural doesn't exist. That is ontology. And they believe that the supernatural doesn't exist because their five senses can't perceive the supernatural. And that is epistemology. Their belief about reality directly flows from how they think knowledge is obtained. So how do you determine someone's belief about knowledge? Well, you can ask them, does objective truth exist? Is objective truth knowable? What is knowledge based on, right? What is the foundation of knowledge? How can you know something, right? And then if you dig deeper, you'll find exactly what this person thinks about truth. If they don't believe that truth really exists, then they're most likely not Christian. And that's where they base their entire worldview. So we need to figure out what these people believe about knowledge. Now, E, ethics. So we've got theology, we've got anthropology, we've got knowledge, and now ethics. How do you determine someone's ethics? We don't need to define ethics because we all know what it is. So how do you determine someone's ethics? Are we ultimately accountable to anything? Okay. Do they admit or acknowledge certain things are wrong, right? And if so, why do they say that these things are wrong? Who is to say that murder is wrong? Okay, do you think murder is wrong? Yes. Why do you think murder is wrong? Okay, do you have any reason to tell me why I should not murder someone? You could ask, is one evil worse than another, right? So is murder worse than stealing a candy bar? If so, how do you measure this? How can you tell me what one evil, if something is more evil than another thing? Is there some kind of something that you can kind of measure it up against that says, oh yeah, this is worse than this? So another thing I want to mention is that all four of these components rely upon each other. So you can't take one out of the mix because the entire worldview collapses. So I mentioned murder. Let's just do murder. Let's talk about murder from a Christian worldview, right? So ethics states that murder is wrong. Knowledge tells us that murder is wrong, which is ontology, because it takes an innocent human life, which is epistemology. Anthropology says that taking human life is ontologically and knowably wrong, because humans are made in the image of God. Theology tells us that ultimate reality is found in the nature and person of God, who created and infused humans with innate worth simply by the nature of who they are, right? Made in the image of God. And it's because that we are made in the image of God that murder is wrong. And if you take one of these components, ethics, knowledge, anthropology, or theology, if you take one of these components out, the whole worldview falls apart. Okay? You can say that murder is wrong, which is ethics, but if you don't know why murder is wrong, then your whole worldview falls apart. If you can't tell me what is so special about humans that murdering them makes it wrong, then your whole worldview falls apart. All four elements of worldviews are necessary, and they require the others to build any kind of reasonable worldview. You could say murder is wrong. Well, why is murder wrong? Well, it just is, right? This is also a worldview. While it's not comprehensive, it doesn't really answer all the questions. This is a worldview because it says that murder is wrong, ethics. They know that murder is wrong, ontology or knowledge. Humans don't deserve to be murdered because they're human, which is anthropology. It assumes some kind of value in humans. And there is something about humanity that gives them value or rights, which is theology. There is something outside of humans that gives us value and rights. So the foundational components of all worldviews are in the acronym TAKE, just in summary. Theology, which is ultimate reality. Anthropology, which is the purpose, value, and nature of humans. Knowledge, how do we know what we know, and how does truth even exist? And ethics, what is right and wrong, and how do we know? This is Tactical Theology, and Lord willing, I'll see you on the next one. God bless.